and Mike will present.
Mr. Chair, members, House Bill 2792 modifies requirements for municipal incorporation and incorporation of urbanized areas. Specifically, the bill requires the County Board of Supervisors to authorize circulation of initiative petitions within 30 days of filing with the county recorder or election department, and allows petitioners for incorporation of a community to circulate petitions for 180 days after Board of Supervisors approval, rather than 180 days after filing the petition with the county recorder or elections department. Additionally, the bill continues through January 1st, 2027, statutory requirements relating to the reduction of territory in an urbanized area, incorporation of urbanized areas that meet certain requirements without approval by bordering cities or towns, and requirements relating to planned community association declarants in certain urbanized areas petitioning for incorporation. The bill also outlines requirements for notification of HOAs in certain urbanized areas seeking incorporation, outlines requirements for public notice of incorporation petitions, and allows members of the public to request modifications to the boundaries of a community requesting incorporation. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Members, any questions for Mike? Okay.
Sponsor's not
We
here.
have the sponsor on his way, and so we will give him a minute when he gets here, but
Okay.
let's go ahead with the testimony in the meantime.
Yes, Mr. Chair, requesting to speak is Stephen Scharboneau. What? Right. Please, sorry, sir. Sorry to butcher your name. Please. State your name for the record.
My name is Stephen Scharboneau, and I'm here on behalf of myself. Thank you very much, Chairman and Committee, for having me. I was a part of a grassroots effort in the New River Desert Hills area, just north of Phoenix, to incorporate into a municipality, and currently unincorporated. That effort has since died and has been arisen by Mr. Thompson here, who will also testify. And we noticed some things about this bill that were problematic and that we wanted to bring to the attention of the committee from our perspective of individuals who have gone through this and started this grassroots effort to sort of try to move something like this forward. The first thing I'd like to point out is the level of difficulty it is to get something like this through. Generally speaking, you're not going to have a lot of money behind it. It's going to be a grassroots organization. You have people of a community that get together and have a common want or need and decide that they're going to do this. It's an incredibly difficult process and requires now an urbanized area requires the approval from a city or municipality, it could be a town, from within I think 6 miles, in some instances 3.5 miles. In doing that, there's a time thing that you have to kind of get just right as far as when the election's coming, because if you have your election on an off time, then you have to pay for it. What this does is the bill has provisions that we disagree with that essentially require you to do a bunch of different things before you're able to even start collecting signatures. And that's really where my point of contention is. One is that we'd have to adopt a resolution from the city before you even start collecting signatures. You'd also have to submit the affidavit before you request signatures, and then you'd also have to go above and beyond and report notice before the signatures. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Fine. Good.
Thank you. Senator Leach.
So, and I'm sorry, I didn't write down your name. I was trying.
Stephen.
Stephen, I was trying to get a hold of the sponsor, and the sponsor's on her way over. So I will ask.
He's here.
He's
He is
here.
here now. I just walked in.
He just walked in the door. So, have you worked? Oh, there he is. Have you worked with a sponsor on this bill and voiced the concerns? Because this bill obviously came over from the House. Have you worked with a sponsor with your thoughts on this bill?
Chairman and Senator Leach, I have not. This is something that just came to my attention recently. I have done work here at the Capitol, but on a different front. I do a lot of criminal justice work and things like that. So this is something that has just come to my attention. David and I, who you'll hear from in a little bit, have gotten together with some ideas. I signed in as opposed because of, I think I am opposed as written. However, I think this is an old law that does need some cleanup, and I think the first part of the bill does that very well. And I would love the opportunity to sit down with Representative Shope and go over some of the ideas that we have.
So I will, Mr. Chairman, I will ask So you're willing to sit down, you're not no, 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 you're no now just because there's parts of it that you think could be done, that would help your situation. So you're open to discussion. I'm not going to speak for the sponsor, it's his bill, but I'm just breaching that right here in this committee, so if we get it on record, you're willing to work towards something that works out.
Mr. Chair, Senator Leach, absolutely. I'm here to offer perspective.
Because, Mr. Chairman, I was somewhat confused for a while because you talked about the difficulties with municipalities and towns and the 6 mile and the 3.5 mile, which is problematic. And I think you agreed to that, right?
Yes, I think we went over some of the testimony the last time this bill was amended, and a lot of the testimony from members here in the Senate and over at the House revolved around the idea that we do want to support the process of communities becoming incorporated and being independent on their own rather than being taken care of by the county if they want to do that and they have the means to do that. So that seems like something we want to support. I think there are provisions that are counterintuitive to that overall legislative intent, and that's really the policy where we're coming from.
So one last question, Mr. Chairman. So, Steve, if this were to be changed, would you move forward with your incorporation process?
Yes, we're going. There's individuals in the New River Desert Hills area that are moving forward with the incorporation process. I have since not been as involved as I was before. It took a lot out of me the first time around. If you have questions about the current process, David Thompson is here, and he's taking that daunting task on, and I'm sure he'd be happy to answer your questions about that.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for being here. Any other questions? And I congratulate you for your involvement in being here. This is a very important part of the process of people being here to express. Generally, we can have better bills if people raise their concerns. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chairman.
Let's turn the time over now. If the sponsor would like to speak next, we're glad you're here.
Thank you. It gives me an excuse to get out of my own committee I'm on. So, TJ Shope, Legislative District Number 8. I think a couple of you, few of you have worked on some of these incorporations. I know Mr. Farnsworth had a bill at one point. I know Mr. Pratt has done some of this stuff. Mr. Leach has been meeting in that area as well with some of the folks who have been interested in this effort. I obviously missed some of the testimony that was given by this gentleman before I got here. However, I'm hopeful because up until this point, we've had a pretty easygoing time, which is shocking, I'm sure, to you on this issue. So I look forward to doing that. I know that Spencer Camps is here with the Home Builders Association, and they had obviously had some concerns, and we took care of those concerns that they had, and as well as some folks that are here from Santan Valley. So obviously everything that we do in this place, we may come in, I may walk in running this bill. I think you had the same experience in trying to do this with an area in mind, and obviously we are state legislators. Every bill that we run has an impact on the entire state that may not have been considered in drafting. So, whatever the concerns are, I look forward to at least having a conversation on this.
Good. Thank you for being here. And if you like, we'll hear the other testimony. Then if you'd like to come back and respond to anything,
Absolutely.
we'll call on you again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Requesting to speak is David Thompson. And then Spencer Kemps. I'm sorry? No,
Go right ahead. We're just saying the next speaker will be.
David Thompson, representing myself. First off, let me apologize. My hearing is very bad. I lost most of it on a flight line in Vietnam. But this is a subject near and dear to my heart. I live in New River Desert Hills north of us, and this bill directly affects us in the going forward. We've started the process several times, 40 years as a matter of fact. But regarding this bill that's currently under discussion, It's obvious from the way the bill is stated that they want to increase resident awareness. They want people to know about it, not have something sprung on them at the last minute. And such things as publishing the petition and so forth make perfect sense on the surface. But when you look at them a little more deeply, they're not quite what they seem to be. For example, this is one of the petitions for incorporation that was used. It's very large and you can't read it. If you were to publish this in a paper, you still wouldn't be able to read it. Actually, you probably wouldn't. It's two-sided. The metes and bounds description that they want published in the paper for 2 weeks, the metes and bounds description can be many pages long, and it reads like thence northerly along the west section of 35 and 26. People don't understand this. To put such a thing in the paper means that it becomes fodder for the bottom of a bird cage, and they don't look at it. It's the 21st century, and even though, having been born a millennia ago, the facilities now are far, far beyond that. Such things as publish it in the paper for 2 weeks doesn't accomplish anyone noticing anything. It does practically the exact opposite. They just ignore it. Perhaps if the bill were to say something on the order of the description, this little piece right here, I can pass this around if you want. This little piece right here could go in the paper. And then a link to a metes and bounds description that's legal, and a map that people could zoom in on and look at. And also probably save $6,000 or $7,000 of a grassroots organization trying to move forward as a community. We want to move forward as a community, not to avoid, but we want to participate. We want to control, to some degree, our area. We want to live as a community rather than the neighbors to be eaten by some city moving along the side. We're trying to avoid annexation and keep our identity. Putting things like large requirements, extended schedules. The schedule as it exists now in the bill is practically 15 months. There's 60 days for this, 2 weeks for that, 20 days for something else, 150 days to prepare for the election. And doing some of these things that are in here actually denies the voters the ability to, for example, in order to publish this, in order to sign the signature, you have to be in favor of incorporation of your area, not in favor of bringing the majority to a vote and let them see it, not to bring the majority of the people the ability to read the arguments for and against and to discuss it in public after an election is real. It's all right to talk about it when people are just kind of wishy-washy about it because it's not an election. An election makes it real. People talk about it, they write their proposals, they go into the ballot, people actually discuss it and decide. We think municipal incorporation should be an election. We think the people should be informed very well. Not something as simple as this stuck in the paper that nobody will read. We'd like to see it done in a way that the people can actually learn from it. Thank you.
Members, any questions for David? Senator Leach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Have you written anything up that would, just so happens you have it, right?
I'm new to this. I have no idea what I'm doing.
I'm accused of the
I
same
thought to
thing,
myself,
Mr. Thompson. being new
suppose
to it,
they
so-
say,
You're in good company.
so, yeah, somewhere here I
Well,
do.
I'm just, my point wasn't necessarily to get it from you, but my point is, the sponsor, I think, is sitting right behind you, and I'm sure that if I can speak for the sponsor, and I hate to do that, I'm sure he would love to see that and see if, how, and maybe it can be incorporated into what he's doing. Because I hear the dates and I hear the time frames, but I'm wondering if out loud, if there's something acceptable in your mind that there's less than that. That is a discussion for you and the sponsor to have. But is there something short of what's in the bill that you would be okay with, that you could recommend?
There are portions of it that I think are really well done and well thought out. But the practicality of actually doing it is missing. I don't think they spoke with people that have fought that battle as strongly as we have. So I believe the bill could be made made whole are very reasonable, but what we have now doesn't meet that. I oppose it for that reason.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Thompson, I agree with you. I will tell you, that as Mr. Shope said in his opening comments, I've been involved in it ever since I was, even before I was elected. I was elected in 2014. Mr. Pratt has been involved with it since when? 2009. And Representative Shope has been involved. He lives almost right there, so he's been involved for a long time. So they have lived through it. They may have different lens than you, and that's okay. You bring another site that I think people want to discuss, and I'm sure the sponsor will do that with you going forward. But I appreciate you being here, and as the chairman said earlier, it's to make the bill better.
Any other questions for Mr. Thompson? Sincerely, we appreciate you being here and giving your input. One more speaker, and then we'll let the sponsor come back up.
We actually got two speakers.
Oh,
We have
two.
Spencer Kemps and Stephen Calandros. Mr. Kemps?
Members, my name is Spencer Camps. I represent the Home Builders Association of Central Arizona. We stand in support of the bill. We support communities seeking the vote of whether to incorporate or not. We are ambivalent on whether they decide to incorporate or not. That's up to the local community to decide. This bill, I want you to know, came out of the Santan area. We've been heavily involved with some of the issues out there. I know some members from the Santan community who I've come to know through this process have been working with the Pinal County attorney. And I think the focus, as Mr. Shope commented on, was to clarify and clean up the statutes related to incorporation. I don't think anybody would deny, and I think the testimony from the gentleman, the two gentlemen from New River, know that incorporation is difficult. It's mucky. And so this was an effort to set those standards in place for local citizens to kind of create that transparency and understanding for everybody through an election process. I understand they may have concerns. I can speak from my organization. We're happy to try and sit down and work with them if necessary. But I think this bill goes a step further. And one point I want to make really clear. The Santan Incorporation statutes expire at the end of this year. Okay, there was a bill from, there were two bills, I think, over in the House this year alone to try and extend those dates to allow that community to incorporate, the right to have a vote on whether they incorporate. And if this bill is to die, that incorporation, I can't speak to every incorporation, but I know for certain that the Santan incorporation statutes would expire. That's why we worked with them. Specifically, my industry is worried about the declarant protections that are put in place. If a community is under declarant control, they have to be a part of the discussion. And there were some modifications made in this bill to address that, including those protections were sunsetted at the end of this year, so it extends them along with the incorporation. So that's why we're passionate about this. We think it's a positive for local members. As it relates to adjacent cities having an opinion on incorporation, we've been debating that for 30 years down here, and that's a tough one. That's a tough nut to crack. So I understand, I'm sympathetic to their position, but I don't know how you address that. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any question. We strongly encourage you to pass this out. It came out 60 to 0 in the House, and I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Camps? Thank you very much.
Somebody requesting to speak is Mr. Calandros.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Steve Calandros. I speak for a group of about 35 Santan Valley residents who support HB 2792 as a common sense solution to real problems. By statute, incorporation is the process of uniting a community based on common interests that bind together the people of the area. However, previous incorporation attempts in Santan Valley resulted in a community divided, not united. I've talked to people on both sides of the issues in Santan Valley, and the one thing they seem to agree on is that they don't like the way the process unfolded. With HB 2792, we can do better. It invites open, informed public scrutiny by requiring incorporation petitioners to publicly advertise map boundaries prior to submission. It empowers communities to voice their opinions on inclusion or exclusion by providing a 60-day public comment period. It establishes firm deadlines for approvals already required by statute, so petitioners can fine-tune their map before gathering signatures. And it protects financial investments developers make to build up our communities. HB 2792 is neither pro nor anti-incorporation, but instead pro-transparency, pro-clarity, and pro-community. It aligns incorporation procedures with those for annexation and special taxing districts. And beyond extending existing sunset provisions, it doesn't change the qualifications for incorporation, only the process. These changes are modest and reasonable, considering that incorporation establishes a new taxing and regulation authority over private property owners. Please give HB 2792 a due pass recommendation, thereby aligning statute with the ultimate goal of bringing communities together. Thank you.
Members, any questions? Thank you very much for being here. Representative Shope.
Thank you,
Comments.
Mr. Chairman. I obviously look. As I mentioned earlier, I think that as you run these bills, they have an impact all over people's experiences. It may be different in one portion of the state than another, and such. So I get that. I look forward. Spencer leaned over to me before he took off. He's also interested if there's a ability to sit down. But the point that was brought up that I think is the key, and the four of us have all voted for those, or at least voted on those bills. I can't speak to, I don't remember if everybody voted for them or not, but there is an expiration date that we do need to take care of for that community to be able to do as they wish. And so that is a portion that is extremely important that we really need to get done. That is a part of this bill. So while I'm willing to go ahead and sit down and chat, that does need to get taken care of this year. So my hope is that with whatever we sit down to do, that it doesn't cause this effort to fail.
Senator Leach.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I've lost track because I simply haven't asked, and my district doesn't come closest. What is the population there now, the estimated population?
Mr. Chairman, or Senator Leach, the estimated population is right around 100,000.
And when we started this, when I got involved, it was estimated at 65 to 70.
Right.
So, and it just keeps, and is Mr. Camps gone?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mr.
he's
Chairman,
just smiling because he's pounding nails and shipping lumber in there left and right. It's a huge growth area in Pinal, and quite honestly, and I've told this to Mr. Shope and Mr. Pratt, I live in the county. We can't wait for them to incorporate and take on their own responsibilities. So. But anyway, 100,000. That's what
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Leach, I've heard that number. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Senator Pratt, but that has been the number that's been bantied about by, especially in statistics from the sheriff's office and county officials over there.
And it just, and Mr. Chairman and Representative, the amount of assets and the amount of capital that it takes away from. Particularly in the sheriff's department. Sheriff Lamwood, I'm sure he would, although he may be contract labor, I don't know what the arrangement is there. Thank you, Mr. Shope.
Mr. Chair, I think it would also be important to note, I know that there are individuals who are helping the group that's brought this bill to me as well, and they have experience in some of these incorporation efforts. I know that they've talked to the county attorney's office. They are. I know that the town manager of the town of Florence, Brent Billingsley, was involved in the city of Maricopa's incorporation effort. There are others who have come forward to lend a hand on this moving forward as well. So they have actually done this. So I look forward to working with them. I because of the expiration of the previous efforts, before we actually come back next session, that is very, very important to this bill. So I would hope that we'd be able to move forward, but we are going. I have no qualms about sitting down.
So, Representative Shope, that was going to be my question now. We hold a lot of stakeholder meetings, and it is impossible sometimes to come to an agreement on everything. We know that. We don't, and I would not require an agreement, but I would ask if you would be willing to try to arrange your schedule to meet with these gentlemen, Stephen and David, and because it sounds like they have some good common sense concerns, whether they can be addressed or not, I don't know, but.
Right, and provided, Mr. Chairman, we can go ahead and you'll let me borrow Mr. Hanna over here to sit down on that and make sure that, so that way he's able to brief you and the other members and et cetera on this, I would, to that extent,
Mr.
absolutely.
Chairman, we need to see the House billing account for Mr. Hannah's time.
Yeah, great.
Okay, very good. Mr. Vice Chair, will you move the bill?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move that House Bill 2792 receive due pass recommendation.
Members, the motion before you is that House Bill 2792 receive a due pass recommendation. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Senator Alston?
Aye.
Senator Leach?
Aye.
Senator Mendez?
Aye.
Senator Pratt?
Aye.
Senator Steele?
Aye.
Senator Borelli?
Aye.
Senator Farnsworth?
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays, and 0 not voting.
Members, by your vote of 7 ayes, 0 nays, and 0 not voting, you have given House Bill 2792 a due pass recommendation. And with no further business, Senate government